Welcome to A Bevy of Bloods, a fans podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club. My name's Noddy, and I'm joined by my good mate Stevo. Stevo, let me kick off things and ask, how did you come to love the Swans?
Hi, thanks, Nod. Good to be here. I've been into the Swans my whole life, really. Before my whole life, if you want to go back that far. Dad always tells a story of me being in '82 in the first year that the Swans were up in Sydney, going along to games. Him and my mum with me, a little unborn baby still inside her. So yeah, quite literally my whole life.
Similarly, mate, I'm an 82 baby, and mum and dad used to say that you could take the kids to the footy for free if you wore red and white. So they'd pack up an esky and sit on the hill, and we just run amok and made an absolute day of it. Yeah, so I've loved the Swannies my whole life as well, mate.
Yeah, nice one. So tell us, Nod. This was sort of off your initiative to have this podcast. What got us here? Why are we doing this?
So I've got a bunch of mates that I go to the footy with, and I have done for about past 5 years. They've been going for about 10 plus years. We've got a group chat where we just keep in touch with one another, text about where we're going to meet up for a drink before the game. I became that guy in every group that just completely floods the chat with match analysis, player stats, trade period updates, just all this unsolicited information. I think there was a healthy dose of burnout from the boys. So at some point, I picked up the Slack with you, and we started just texting back and forth, and it was just it was two-way, and it was beautiful, and it just there was so much information. We created so much content. I thought, why don't we just make a podcast? Because that seems to be what people do these days. So yeah, I think that's how we got here.
Yeah, why not put it out on the internet for everyone to hear? Yeah, good stuff. So really, we have this podcast to partially save your mates from you.
Basically, I love them. Shout out to the boys. But yeah, we're here because of that.
Nice one. And so tell us about the name, because you came up with the name as well, A Bevy of Bloods. What's the name about?
So bevy is a collective noun for a group of swans, and Bloods is the more famous nickname of our beloved footy club.
Okay, so simple. So like you got different names for different groups of animals and stuff. So like some of the other footy teams would have a pride of lions, a flock of magpies, a mob of kangaroos, and then so we're a bevy of bloods, or a bevy of swans, bevy of bloods. And I did a bit of research about a few other of these group names for different animals, and I found my favourite is a marvel of unicorns. So a group of unicorns is called a marvel. And I've been my new football dream is to see the 19th AFL team, the Marvel Unicorns, playing out of Docklands, wearing beautiful pink and glitter.
I can see it. It's just Gil McLaughlin is licking his lips right now, but you may be breaking the hearts of the whole state of Tasmania. But we'll wait and see what happens there, mate.
There's a lot of unicorn lovers out there, mate. I tell you, think of the merchandise opportunities.
Yeah, especially with Marvel, just plug and play, ready to go, mate. So this is our very first episode, and we are going to talk about season 2020 review. We're going to talk about the trade and draft period, and then we're going to finish up with a little bit of a chat about our AFL fantasy team, which is made up exclusively of Sydney Swans players, and of course, we are called A Bevy of Bloods. So that's going to be the episode. At this point, Steve, I'm going to throw over to you for your thoughts on last year.
Okay, season 2020. I mean, it was a bit of a mess, really. It started out with a whole bunch of confusion, and it went backwards and forwards, and it was a very disjointed year, I guess, for the AFL as a competition, and also for the clubs and the supporters as well. I mean, it was a lot of adjustment for supporters. Yeah, I mean, on field, the main things went down to 20-minute, or from 20-minute to 16-minute quarters. Players were living in hubs, moving around the country. At the end of the season, Swans played our 17 games, finished bottom four. But really, I don't feel like I watched a bottom four season. Like I feel a lot of positive after the 2020 season, which, after a bottom four season, you might not expect to feel. If we look at how the season went itself, I think, one thing that is very clear is that it's a young, developing team, and that means that there's going to be often inconsistencies. So the performance was a bit up and down from time to time. There were days when they were really, really on and played some really, really good footy, like exciting footy. And some of the younger guys really stepped up and did well. Other days it was harder to be competitive against the stronger teams. And I think what we saw throughout the season too, I mean, first of all, there was injuries to some key players, some players who the Swans have been relying on a lot over the years to do a lot of the ball winning and scoring, weren't really around. Franklin didn't play at all. Josh Kennedy played 12 only out of 17 games. Rampy played 11 out of 17. I think Heaney played 6. Sam Reed missed quite a bit of footy. I think 10 games I've got written down here. So Hewitt is a very good emerging midfielder. Only played 6 games for the season. So a lot of experience missing, which meant that of the experienced players that were left, a lot kind of got put on the shoulders of a small number. So if you look at the best and fairest results from 2020, top 3 by a mile is Lloyd, Parker, Papley, and then there's a pretty chunky gap, and then the next one is Rampy, who missed almost half the season, and then the next one is Cunningham, who's 5th, who's again an experienced player, and then in that order Mills. Rowbottom had a great year, came in 7th, which was really exciting, and then Kennedy again, who has missed a good chunk of footy, has still managed to come 8th in the best and fairest. So a lot of heavy lifting being done by a handful of guys. But at the same time, I'm not negative about that either, because it's a developing young side, and a lot of really exciting young players started to get more experience and really take the game on. Rowbottom I already mentioned. I mean, he's a 20-year-old. He's come top 10 in the best and fairest, which is a fantastic result. It really shows how valued he is within the club, I think, by the coaches. Guys like Dawson, McCartan, McInerney, Stevens, some really, really positive signs. So overall, yep, it was a bottom 4 season, but I feel good about coming out of the season and looking forward to this coming season, because I think there's a lot to be excited about with the list we've got, which we'll talk more about a bit as we go forward.
Definitely. And if we look at some of the numbers from that year, so we had 5 wins from the 17 games. 3 of those 5 wins were against 2 teams lower than us, and then the 1 team that was slightly higher than us. So we beat the Crows, the Roos, and the Hawks, the other teams that occupied the bottom 4. However, we only beat each of those teams by a less than total of 11 points. So beat the Crows by 3, the Roos by 11, and the Hawks by 7. Coincidentally, I was at the Hawks game in the wet this year. Last year was one of 2 games that we could actually go to as members. It was the Hawks and the Suns, both at the SCG before the Swannies packed up and hit the hub life. But look, it was what it was. But the other 2 wins that we had for the year were against 9th placed Melbourne and 10th placed GWS, who themselves had very highly inconsistent years. Both of those wins, though, were good wins for us, and they were the 3rd and 4th highest scores of the season. 67 points against Melbourne, 66 points against GWS. In my opinion, the GWS game was probably our best game of the year, or one of our best games of the year. But again, 74 points against the Crows and 71 points against the Roos. Fun fact here, Stevo, we were booked in to take a trip to Adelaide to go and hit up a couple of vineyards before the game, like me, my missus, and a couple of the boys. So we're all pumped to get going. Then obviously the season was slam shut, so we couldn't go. So we were devastated.
Yeah,
absolutely
I bet.
Devastated. Yeah, I'd actually never been. So, I mean, I've been to SA, but I hadn't been to some of the vineyards we were going to go to. So, tough life, I guess. Yeah, I'll stop complaining. We lost all other games against the top 8 teams with an average points differential of about 25. The biggest margin was 53-point loss to the Saints. The closest was a 6-point loss to the Cats. 3 of those 8 losses were within 9 points or less. So lost to the Tigers by 8, the Pies by 9, and the Cats by 6. But the Tigers, that was that game in the wet where Dimmer had a whinge to Horse saying, "How dare you flood the defense like it's never been done before." The Pies, we lost by 9. I think Josh Dacos got like one of the goals of the year from the pocket. And that last game of the year against the Cats, we probably could have won that, but even losing by 6, it was still a good way to finish the year, I think. Our other losses were uneven. We lost to the Bombers by 6. The Bulldogs beat us by 28. The Eagles beat us by 34. The Suns, again at the SCG, beat us by 32. The Dockers beat us by 31. I think that was our worst game of the year, in my opinion. And then the Blues beat us by 5. So up and down again, as you're saying, for a developing team. Our average points scored per game was 48. But then if we look at the points scored when we won as opposed to the points conceded when we won, and then the points scored when we lost and points conceded when we lost, there's a few themes that come out. When we won, we scored 67 points on average and conceded 51 points. When we lost, we scored 46 points on average but conceded 69. So you can see there we've got a 16-point winning average and a 22-point losing average. So that's basically like losing each quarter by a goal or so, which I think you had previously pointed out is about right for a developing team.
Oh, I mean, there's no real exact margin you'd prefer to lose by. But if you think like by a quarter, if you're losing a quarter by 4 goals to 3, then at least you're in touch, you're competitive, you're hitting the scoreboard. If you're not scoring, or if you're having quarters where you have big blowout quarters, so if consistently you lose like every quarter by 3 goals to 4, and you lose by 25, 30 points, okay, you'd rather not lose, but I'd be much more concerned, I guess, if there were massive blowout quarters in there, like quarters where you were losing like 6 goals to 1 or 8 goals to nothing or that sort of thing. So at least being competitive while you're learning and developing, even if you're losing.
Yeah, and that's that blood spirits coming through, mate. The going back to your point earlier about how we some of those, I guess, quote unquote senior players had a lot of responsibility fall on their shoulders. Tom Papley, and bless his cotton socks for not going to Carlton. He basically ended up being a 5'10", is he 5'10" key forward who he kicked 20 goals 12 in rounds 1 to 9 and 6 goals 15 in rounds 10 to 18 to finish the year with 26 goals, 27 behind. And look, I think you'd mentioned earlier that that's probably not ideal, but coachable. So at this point, Steve, I'll just mention to the listeners that you're an ex-player, but you might still put the boots on every now and then, but you're actually a coach, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I play when the team absolutely needs someone to play. I'm a bit towards the end of my playing years now, which you can calculate for yourselves if you think that I was born in '82. So I'm getting towards the end of my playing years. I still play a bit, but mostly coaching, yeah. So there's a team here. I'm living in Finland, actually. I should point that out too. I live now in Finland, which is why we don't go to the games together. I live in Finland, where I'm coaching with another bloke, Wyatt, my co-coach, the Turku Dockers local team, and then also the Finnish national team, the Icebreakers, also with Wyatt. Yeah, the Finland Icebreakers, we're called. So you're coaching both of them.
What are the jersey? What are your colours, by the way? I'm just curious.
Finland's all right. Finland's blue and white because that's the Finnish colours. So North Melbourne, but it's Finnish national flag, I guess, was decided before North Melbourne became a football club. What was it? I don't need to check. I need to check that actually, because if it's not, we can consider changing the team colours. Anyway, the Dockers though, it's a bit of a weird one. We're called the Dockers. We have no real alignment with the Fremantle club. We're called the Dockers because Turku is a port city, so that's why we took the Dockers name. And then we wear black and white because black and white is the city colours. So it's a bit of a mishmash of everything.
I just don't know how I feel right now. You're called the Dockers, but you're black and white, and you live in a town called Turku. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good stuff, mate. So if you were coaching Tom Papley, and it's a big if, but you wouldn't necessarily be disappointed that he sprayed so many behinds because he's still getting in the right positions, right?
Yeah, I mean, I might have coached him. He's from Victoria, isn't he? Yeah, I wouldn't have coached. I was thinking I might have coached him in Auskick once upon a time, but yeah, I don't think now he's got much to learn from me. But yeah, he's a small forward. First of all, it's a tough position to play on the ground. I've played most positions on the field besides ruck, and I think that the small forward is probably the toughest because of the type of role you have to play. So usually you're not the central target. You've got to be reliant on a whole lot of factors that are often outside your control to get the footy in your hands, and you can have a blinder of a game, and you might only have 10 touches in a whole game. Midfielder gets it 30, 40 times, so you've really got to make the most of what you do with the ball too, with the execution, and not just what you're doing when you get the footy, but also how you're bringing other players into the game, how the whole forward line is functioning. But then to put a small forward type as pretty much the main guy in the forward line is a tough gig to start with, I think. And on top of that, okay, he's missed a few kicks. We got here in the second half of the season, he kicked 6 goals, 15. He kicked 20-12 in the first half of the season. That's good. That's like you're on track for a 40-goal season in a shortened year. That's like a 50-goal year in a 22-round season. That's amazing. And we have to remember too that small forwards, like if you want to be among the absolute elite small forwards in history, if you're kicking 2.5 goals a game, you're already up there. So his numbers from the first half of the season are very good. And from the second half, okay, 6-15. Yep, he missed a fair few shots, but at least he's getting the ball. And we also don't know what else he's doing around the contest, around the ground. It's much harder watching on TV than at the game to know exactly what value you're getting from a small forward. So I think he's a great player. And I think he had a pretty good year given everything.
Yeah, I think rewarded. He's been elevated into the leadership group, which I think has about 6,000 members.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it's 6 or 7 players now, but we can talk about that in an upcoming podcast. And the last point I would make is that we had 7 debuts, tying into your point that a couple of the youngsters had a good opportunity to have a run. Some of them are still with us. Some of them were let go, and we'll talk about that afterwards. But of those, obviously, Stevens, Warner, Ling, Wicks, and Amati are still around, and some of those guys are seriously pushing for or putting pressure on the more established players because they are looking the goods. But at this point, Steve, I think we'll move over to the trade and draft period. So why don't you just give me a quick summary of how it went down? Or actually, before that, I think it's worthwhile if I just very quickly give you a lead into that by mentioning who we let go. So why don't we start there? So
good idea.
So we actually delisted 9 players, came in 2 batches. We let go of Knoll, Mybaum, Rouse, Reynolds, Stoddart. We let go of Foote, Fox, Thurlow, Gray, and Elijah Taylor. And then at the same time, to deal with some of the COVID fallout, there were new list size requirements brought in by the AFL. I won't go into the details of that because it's some of that convoluted analysis that I burnt the other group chat, burnt those boys out with. But basically, I'll do a summary. I'll pass over to you now. So those are the players we let go, and now bring us up to speed with how the trade and draft period went down, Stevo.
Okay, yeah. So in addition to those guys who just got straight out delisted or whatever, Aaliyah went to Port Adelaide in a trade for a bunch of draft picks. I guess. I think a lot. I was sad to see him go. I enjoy watching him play football, and I'll continue to enjoy watching him play football for Port Adelaide. But they had opportunities there for him that I guess the Swans couldn't offer. I'm not sure of the details, but I guess in terms of both playing role and contract, I imagine. So he's gone to Port, and I think a lot of fans were sad to see him go because he was a bit of a fan favourite, I think.
He was one of my favorite players. Is awesome, just such a great character, and his story as well was unreal. But I was very, very sad to see him go, and I was a little bit suspicious of the trade itself, which I think I'd let you know a lot about at the time. But I think as you're saying, he obviously got offered a 4-year contract, and good on him. I think Port are definitely in the window, and they're going to be a much better team, an even better team with someone like Aaliyah helping out down back. So
I think so for sure. I think he'll make him better. So he's gone, which is a shame, but you can't keep every player in footy. So it's definitely part of the the trade draft period that I was disappointed in. But then if I look at it as an entire thing, which we'll do now, I guess more realistic and less disappointed given where we ended up. So Aaliyah went out, in came a whole bunch of picks in different years and different rounds, and and we won't list all of those. But then from West Coast as well, Hickey, the ruckman, has come in. I don't know much about him. I think I looked him up and he played 3 games last year, so I know very little about the guy. But maybe Nod, you know more.
Oh, look, I was a little bit. I just I understood why we had to bring in a ruck and ideally an established ruck, but I just thought that there were some other options out there that we could have gone for. But we do have an anecdote for the listeners to tie into that point later on. But yeah, look, Hickey, I guess, was brought in because he played one full season. Like Swans, this is his 4th club, so he's got like that good, diverse experience from different club environments. But he did a solid year at the Saints and a solid year at the Eagles. So look, he's proven, and I think he wanted to come back to the East Coast because he's got family in Queensland. So I guess it's a win-win in that sense. I was just a bit ginger with some of the pick swaps and the fact we lost Aaliyah. So that was my beef at the time. But yeah, what else happened then, Steve? I think that was pretty much it for the trade period, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of players, it was Ilya out, Hickey in, and then a whole bunch of various pick swaps because they needed them for the academy players that they had their eye on in the draft they wanted to take. So I guess we can go onto that. What happened next? So the Swans entered the draft with all their points, and pick number 4, wasn't it? Or pick number 3, but pick number 4 by the time the Bulldogs took that number 1 guy with their academy pick. So pick 3 that became pick 4. And so pick 4, they took Logan Mcdonald, a very exciting looking tall forward from West Australia, who's had some time in the waffle last year, did pretty well in the waffle. Early signs through preseason and stuff, he's looking like he's going to be a very good player. And I don't know, I like his mentality. Because I usually, with these younger draft guys, I go onto YouTube and there's various people who've interviewed them over the years as they've been, draft targets or whatever. And he just has a very calm confidence about him, which I really like. So I think he'll be one to really watch. And, he's a tall forward. He might take a while to develop. They don't usually come through as quick as some of the smaller players. But, yeah, I think they've got a good one in him, I hope.
Definitely. I think, look, all the journalists were saying Swans needed a key defender. And it's like, that's the last thing we needed. We have so much depth in our backline, but obviously Buddy, who's, a once in a generation player, is coming to the end of his career. We need like that next tall forward to take us into the next, round of competitiveness. And yeah, I think we were both like, why would we want this Denver Granger Barras, even though he looks like a great footy player?
Like a very good footballer, yeah, for sure.
And, obviously, if we did end up with him, it would have been great, but he does seem to have a certain amount of confidence that might not fit in with that humility that the Swans have. But I think he was quoted as saying he wanted to be the best player in the AFL. So that's good to have a goal, right? Everyone should have an aspiration, but it seemed quite lofty.
Yeah, he looked like he copped a bit in some of the media for that. And I thought, it's so easy to pluck a one-liner out of a whole day of press interviews of a kid too. So, I kind of felt a bit for him with that because, it's like when you do an interview and then you say one thing without even thinking and then boom, because he's probably dreamed since he was a kid of being the best footy player in the world. But,
they all do. It's just, you're right, they picked up on it. But look, he got to the Hawks, and the Hawks are going to be great for that. And I hate saying that, but we got a good one. They got a good one. So we can just let that rivalry sit for the moment. Steve, who were our next picks? Who do we get after that?
Next up, we got Braden Campbell. He was the academy player, pick 5 in the end. Hawks. We said put a bid on him. So Swans took him at pick 5, which is what they needed all their pick swaps from the trade period for. He looks like he's going to be again very good player. And then Errol Goulden, another academy player, taken a little bit lower on the draft, but from all signs through the preseason, again looks like a really exciting player. And the two of them both through the Swans Academy, both known each other for years. So it's good to have these guys who are already mates, I guess, before they get to a footy environment. And these Swans Academy guys, they've spent time around the club before they get there too. So it's not like it's a complete learning curve like it might be for other kids that come in.
No, that seamless transition. They're basically professionals. I think he was taken at pick 32 after the Cats had a bid on him. So the Hawks and the Cats having a bid on the academy boys, I mean, that just shows you that, the academy is doing something right, and that the rest of the clubs are having a really good look, and especially the Hawks and the Cats are well-respected setups, aren't they? So I think that was it for the national draft period, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just those three in the main draft, and then we got two rookies as well. The first one that came in was local guy from New South Wales Central Coast, Mark Shather or Sheether, who we agreed on how to say his name.
I think we're going with Shater.
Shather.
Shater.
Mark.
Shater.
Mark. We'll call him Mark. There's no other Marks on the list.
More
that I can think
importantly,
of.
he's from the Central Coast. You.
Yes, he is. We both grew up on the New South Wales Central Coast, so it's good to see some Central Coast talent getting back into the Swans. Following along, Jared McVeigh, Paul Bevan. There's been some really good coast-based guys coming through the AFL and the Swans, which is great.
That's right. I think he played the same club. He's Kalani Vale Bombers, I think. So that's where the McVeigh brothers started before they moved to Sydney. So that's some good stock there coming through. So it's a fantastic opportunity for him. Who else? Who else was in the rookie draft there?
Yeah, there's one other, and also I should add, I shouldn't forget, Daniel Lloyd from GWS Giants is also Kalani Vale. So
yes, and he apparently is the most accurate goal kicker in the AFL at this moment.
Yeah, I heard that he doesn't miss, and so so he was a mature age draft pick that came through, or rookie pick or whatever he was that came through for Kalani Vale too. So yeah, good to see the coast getting some players in the AFL.
That's it, mate. Flying the flag.
Yeah, and then last one we got this Malachy Carruthers. We had some dispute over his name pronunciation too, but yeah, Malachy Carruthers is he from South Australia? I think was he?
Yeah, SA boy.
Yeah.
Yep. Some dispute, Stevo, if I can just take a couple of moments here to explain to the listeners that you were hell-bent that the pronunciation was Malachi. You even got an Irish friend of yours who lives over there. You recorded her saying Malachi and you sent it to me like a smug bastard. And then it started, all the Swans videos came out. It's like, it's Malachi. And I was like, no.
No, it is Malachy. That's what she said as well. My friend, she said Malachy.
Was it the other way around?
Yeah, no, because I just I was saying Malachi or Malaki or whatever. I can't remember. I was mispronouncing it left, right, and center. And you're like, nah, man, it's Malachy. And I said, fine, I've got an Irish friend. I'm going to check. So I texted her just the word, like just his name. And I said, say this in a voice message. She just said Malachy. I was like, damn. Okay. So
that was that's one for Noddy and 0 for Stevo. But I think he sounds like a Bond villain. I think it's a very cool name though, Malachy Carruthers. So he's got a very cool name. Maybe not as
Errol
cool
too.
as Errol. Yeah, the name. Yeah, my grandfather's name was Errol, so I'm developing a bit of a soft spot for Errol Goulden.
Errol's a cool name. Yep, Errol and Malachy.
Why do you love the name Errol, Stevo?
Errol Flynn, the great actor, and the song Errol. Maybe we could play it one time, just a snippet, just if we can get away with it.
I'm just double checking. Was it 1982 or 1928 you were born?
I don't remember.
I'm just double checking. Listen, Stevo, give me your score out of 10 for the trade period and then also for the draft period.
All right. So and I was thinking about this too, because we were talking about this, and I thought I'll talk about the two separately, and then also, because really it's all a thing. It's like it's one thing together, but it's kind of like two chapters in the same story in a way, the trade and the draft period, which is why we're talking about them together. So I guess I'll separately score and then overall result. I guess if we look purely just at the trade period, lose a very good player, bring in ruck cover, a bunch of pick swaps that, they come in anything, you don't really know at the time what they'll be until you use them on stuff. So, I don't know, 7.5, 8 maybe. The draft, I think this is the most excited I've been about a Swans draft for a long time. I mean, 3 really, really elite players. That to me is like a 9.5 or a 10. And then if I think, okay, if we had to give up a Lear to clear space and bring in the points and stuff or the picks or whatever to get all three of these kids along the line, I reckon it's a good result. It's worth it. I give it like a 9+ out of 10 for the whole thing, because if you think about it that way, you think, okay, we lost to Lear, but if we weren't able to say get Goulden because we held on to a Lear, then maybe we look at it differently. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of it, I guess, like that. But I'm pretty close with you. I think, I think a bit of emotion got in the way, losing a Lear. So, yeah, probably like a 7.5 for the trade period. But similarly with you, I think it's one of our best draft periods that we've done in recent times. And, yeah, just left me feeling really excited about the future. So, yeah, probably probably a 9.5 probably. So, I think that it's all ahead of us again. But actually, one thing I'm going to tell a quick story here. I was up at my local coffee shop the other morning before I went into work, and I'm just getting my morning coffee with my Sydney Swans keep cup, which I think is probably the only one of those on the streets of Sydney. But I actually saw sitting down for their morning coffee. I'm going to call him Little Birdie. Okay, but I can say with complete confidence that this little birdie comes from the inner sanctum of the upper echelon of the Sydney Swans coaching department. So I'm not going to say who within the coaching department, but let's just say it was someone within the coaching department. I was completely gobsmacked to see at my local coffee shop. I think probably just having a coffee with his friend or someone, I interrupted their morning to ask a few questions about how the Swans are going. And he was a totally lovely bloke and totally obliged me and gave me all this info, and I was just so grateful. Basically, I asked him, going back to all my concerns about whether or not Hickey was the right ruck to bring in. I was like, "How's Hickey going?" And he said Hickey is tracking really, really well. He's quite a similar player to Callum Sinclair. Obviously, we needed that extra insurance, as we've both touched on, because we really only have Marty and McLean to pinch hit because Sam Naismith is still recovering from his second knee. But, at best, Amati and McLean are developing players, and they're probably more forward or defenders / rucks. So we really needed someone to bring in. And I said, okay, so if that's the point, did we ever look at a player like Braden Pruce, who I think probably would have set us up for, he would have been our next ruck for the next 8 to 10 years, maybe, or maybe not 10 years, but to our next flag tilt. And he said, look, Pruce was seriously considered, but given everything that was going on in the, especially in the lead up to the draft period, that coupled with some of the financial constraints that they're feeling at the moment, we weren't able to offer Pruce the kind of deal that he was inevitably able to get from the Giants, and that's really why we couldn't go after him. I said, okay, if that's the case, then was Sam Jacobs, who was already at the GWS Giants and had like a seriously good career with Adelaide Crows before he moved over to the Giants last year or the year before that. And Little Birdie said, yeah, Sam or Sauce Jacobs was regularly viewed in local scrimmages. And so they were able to really, really see where he was at. But it became clear that his heart was no longer in the game, so it wasn't really a viable option. So, look, I was so satisfied after hearing that directly from the horse's mouth. So it wasn't John Longmire. Let me just be clear. I did just want to slip that in, but I felt very comfortable after hearing all of the background to the thought there why we took Hickey. So I did forget to ask whether or not we made a play at my boy Petey Laddams over at Port Power, who I think is going to be the next big ruck. But I think you had made the point previously, if you've got an up-and-coming ruck that looks the goods, you're going to do everything you can to hold on to him, right?
Yeah, why would you let him go? I mean, for sure.
He does look the goods. He looks like he can ruck with the best of them, but also move forward and make a make some damage up front. But okay, I think that brings us to the end of those two sections, and I think we're going to finish with just touching upon a little plug to our AFL fantasy team.
Oh, before that, we forgot one thing. We didn't talk about the coaches. We were going to say, because we've had some coaching changes too.
Yes,
Not
you're right.
not
Sorry,
just
we always.
the players. We've had some ins and outs in the coaching panel.
Yeah. So what happened there?
So who left? So John Blakey has gone to North Melbourne, and who was the other one? Steve Johnson has gone
Stevie
across
J.
the
Yeah.
Giants, or back to the Giants, however you want to look at it. So those two out, and then in we got Don Pike, the former Adelaide coach, and then Ben Matthews from Melbourne, ex-Swans player as well.
So interesting to bring in Don Pike. Obviously, had great success with the Crows, taking the team to the grand final to ultimately lose. But then the following year, having that shocker with that preseason camp, and it just sort of all unravelled from there. But you think it's a pretty good move bringing in someone like that with great coaching experience and from an outside perspective.
Yeah, definitely, and I think I mean the preseason camp thing happened, and it's something which is clearly regrettable. And the Adelaide Football Club is they've struggled a bit through it and to recover from it. But I don't think that defines his entire career in football. And I think if we look at his background, going back all the way through to his playing days and his success as a footballer, coming through his coaching, as you said, he took the Crows to a grand final. And what I really like is that he's an experienced and very well skilled operator who can bring, I guess, more of an experienced leadership style rather than simply being a line coach. It's not like you're just bringing in one of the line coaches from the Crows or something, or from Port, doesn't matter. You're bringing in a guy who's used to managing an entire organisation. And I think that's got to be a positive. And the fact that he's from organisations outside the Swans, I like as well. I think it's good to get some fresh ideas sometimes. And Ben Matthews,
So
I
look,
don't
we're
know
set. Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, he's an ex-Swan, so bringing an ex-Swan back into the Swans, yeah, I guess that's why it's really important to have the likes of Don Pike and Dean Cox in there, because the rest of the boys are really from within. So yeah, look, I think it's a pretty good mix, and obviously they've got a good setup there, and hopefully they can keep working hard, pushing the players so that we can get into the finals again soon. I think that's the aim. But
Yeah, it's something I liked. John Longmire, I think it was the recent podcast listen. He was talking to, I think it was one of the AFL journalists. And he said, we want to be getting this team into a position not only where it's pushing to be in the finals and, just making the finals. We want to be a force in finals. We want to be a strong team again. It's not good enough for us that we get to 6th or 7th or 8th and that's it. We want to be a strong team in the finals for a long time with this group. And I really like that attitude. His approach is, it made me have a lot of faith in where the club's going.
Yeah, because you do see the trolls on Facebook, and they're after blood, aren't they? Sometimes, and Horse Longmire, he really cops it, saying we don't have a plan B. But sometimes you can't have a plan B when you're dealing with the youngest team of the round each round. So look, we're getting there. We're getting there slowly, and I think we're both very optimistic about the future.
Yeah, like we're talking about a team that finished in the bottom 4 that's often had the youngest team out there, as you said. And it makes me think, like when you mention, okay, we lost all of our games to the top 8, but would any top 8 team ever be expecting to lose to a bottom 4 team full of kids anyway, if you look at it from their point of view? So I think where they're at, I'm not one of these supporters who's calling for blood. I think they're doing a good job.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Stevo. So we got the coaches in there. Apologies to the coaches there for the near miss. But we are going to talk a little bit about our AFL fantasy team, aptly named A Bevy of Bloods, which is exclusively made of players from the Sydney Swans Football Club. And we're going to try our best to keep them throughout the AFL fantasy year as only current Swans players. But Stevo, you had a really good idea whereby, just in case there are injuries or we can't make any trades, what was the idea you had?
Well, yeah, I reckon rather than fielding a 0 on the field, if it gets to that point, where we're restricted with the positions and the however it works. It's a while since I've played it, actually. This will be exciting. It's my first time for a while. If we get to that point, then I reckon our first port of call for emergencies or backups or whatever is ex-Swans guys. So like Aaliyah, Tom Mitchell, come in and be captain with his 45 touches a week or whatever he gets.
Oh my God, he's just ruck. He's just a pig. He's an absolute pig, not a ruck. Sorry, but
all the St Kilda boys, it's like half of them, half the Saints. Who is it? Membray, Jones, Hanbury. That's three from there. There's a few others around that we'll bring in.
Well, Gaz Rowan down at the Cats.
Yeah.
We let go of Nankervis, who's gone on to win nothing but flags with Richmond. Darcy Cameron, ironically, a ruck. Can't believe it. And good old Mummy, who's still kicking around at the Giants. But
true.
I don't know. Yeah, I think he thinks he's only going to play 1 or 2 games this year, and that'll be about it. But yeah, so that's probably if we've forgotten anyone who's an ex-Swan that's still currently playing AFL, we'll obviously set up a Facebook page and an Instagram page for A Bevy of Bloods that we can put up some info and let everyone know when our next episode is out. And basically, Steve, I think we're aiming to do release a podcast each week, roughly.
Yeah, I guess we thought once a week during the season. So, I mean, yeah, every round, sort of a bit of a wrap up of the previous weekend's match, and then a bit of chat about the week's incoming.
Yeah, and I think we're going to aim to release a pre-season update. So we're going to have seen a couple of scratch matches and the one Amy Community Series match, and then after they're completed, we're going to talk about the performances there, and then who's probably our best 22 leading into round 1. So that'll be our next episode. And then once the season gets started, as you said, we'll be hoping to push out a weekly, essentially, review of the game, and then obviously the best team rolling going forward. And basically anything else that comes up with the Swans or AFL or just really life, just see what happens. I think we'll be chiming in as well.
Good stuff.
So that brings us to the end of our first episode, Steve. I want to say thank you. Thank you for all your insights.
No, thank you. This has been good. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Yeah. All right. Well, let's say thanks for tuning in. Looking forward to next time. And cheer the red and the white.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, mate. I'll catch you next time.
Yeah. See you, mate.